School Board of Education to order. There are 3 closed session items on tonight's agenda. 1, student enrollment in 1 case and student expulsion in 2 cases, the Education Code Section 48918F. Number 2, collective bargaining matters, discussion with negotiator Daniel Thigpen, Executive Director, Labor Relations and Government Affairs regarding CSEA Chapter 127, General Operations Support, Chauffeurs, Teamsters, Local Union 150, Transportation Supervisors, Teachers, and Certificated Supervisor Units, and regarding non-represented groups, management, and confidential units, Government Section 549576. And item number 3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9D, Section 2 and 4. We do not have any cards for closed session. So therefore, we'll now move into closed session and we'll return to open session at 6:30. I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified School Board of Education back to order. The meeting is being audio and video recorded, and any recording may capture sounds and images of those attending this meeting. The recording will be posted on the district's website. Board meetings are being held in person in the boardroom and at the district office, and the community is welcome to attend. The meeting will also be viewed on the district's website where it is being live streamed. Please, we're going to ask Mr. Ben Avey to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Good evening and welcome. I am Saul Hernandez, Board Vice President. To my left is Mr. Ben Avey, Board Clerk. To his left is Ms. Paula Viasquez, Ms. Tanya Krepchek, Mr. Manuel Perez, and Ms. Zima Creason, board members. To my right is Superintendent Melissa Bassinelli, and to her right is Board Administrative Assistant Stephanie Cunningham. Ms. Costa, Board President, is participating in this meeting via telephone. Ms. Costa, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions to please respond. Are you able to hear the proceedings on your end?
Yes, I am.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting?
Yes, I do.
Has the agenda been posted at your location?
Yes,
Is your location such that any member of the public could participate in this public portions of this telephone meeting from your location?
yes,
Members of the board, are you able to hear Ms. Costa? All votes tonight will take place via roll call. Individuals who are attending the meeting in person and would like to offer a public comment, we ask you to complete a speaker request card. See cards available at the table, and you will be called at the appropriate time during the agenda. Please note that Board Bylaws 9323 limits visitor comment to 2 minutes per speaker with no more than 30 minutes per single topic. Time will be extended for any speaker who uses an interpreter. Please note that the public comments, including your name, become part of the public record. We are now at item D, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes for June 11th? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes for June 11th? Ms. Vasquez, approve. Mr. Perez, second. We're going to approve this by roll call, please. Ms. Creason, Mr. Perez, Ms. Krepchek, Ms. Vasquez, Mr. Avey.
Aye.
Ms. Costa.
aye.
And I abstain since I was absent on June 11th. The motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. I don't think we do not have any reports from staff. So we're now at item E2, board appointed district committees. Do we have any tonight? I don't. Oh, we do. Okay. Let's begin. Chair of the LCAP, Ms. Jennifer Morgan, come on up.
Testing. Good evening, Mr. Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, Ms. Cunningham. My name is Jennifer Mullen Morgan, and I am the 23-24 LCAP Parent Advisory Committee Chair. Veteran board members might recognize me from past presentations when I was the chair of the Curriculum and Standards Committee. This was my first year on LCAP, and I was honored and humbled to once again be elected as chair by my committee peers. This year saw a notable shift in district committee structures, and the LCAP PAC is no exception, with an increase in appointed citizens to reflect the newly expanded board, the revised bylaws across all district committees, as well as the redesigned and exceptionally detailed LCAP plan format. There was plenty of work to keep Mr. Tornatore and Ms. Mulder busy. As committee chair, it has been a joy working with this pair as we collaborated on ways to refine and make clear information for the committee, create educational workshops for new members, and ensure all voices were honored and heard when the group met in person. I know John Franco gave a thorough presentation on the LCAP itself at the previous board meeting. So what I will offer in addition to that is the opportunity to draw your attention to the superintendent's responses to the questions posed by both the LCAP PAC and DLAC. First, you may have noticed that both committees inquired about the LCAP connection to school site councils. There are many citizens that not only participate in these district committees, but also their schools' site councils, and they're observing discrepancies between what the district is striving to achieve and what is truly happening on the front lines. While these experiences vary depending on the school sites, the tenure or experience of the administrators there, or any other number of factors, it is worth recognizing the pattern of concern. For this reason, we were thrilled with the redesign of the LCAP structure for true accountability and measurement, and greatly appreciate the streamlined connection between the strategic plan, the LCAP, and eventually, hopefully, the individual school SIPSAs. Unfortunately, less than half of the schools in the district have site council information available directly on their schools' websites, with as little as 14 schools in total posting the minutes from site council meetings. Given that majority of the schools in the district are classified as Title I, it should be safe to assume that the LCFF funds allocated at many of your sites would in more instances than not exceed PTA or PTO monies raised. Site councils should be a priority avenue for parent engagement, and school administrators should regard this as such. Second, in reviewing key themes from the educational partner feedback, safety and well-being for both students and staff emerged as a clear area of concern across numerous groups. Feel free to check out a school bathroom during any of your site visits. Our seasoned committee members called out this continued pattern shared in feedback year after year, which prompted our inquiry about further details of incident reports throughout the district. I'm grateful to Superintendent Bassanelli and her team for providing a detailed response to this request. I believe it was in the packet at the last board meeting. Like all things in the world of data, this table of information alone is insufficient to deduce a root to these problems. However, we offer this information to be used as a tool for you, our board members. If I was in your shoes, I might layer this information with perhaps a site's climate survey results and their SIPSAs to identify opportunities to advocate for programs, services, or professional development available in an effort to help these schools in my area work to prepare these issues. Again, I'm not implying this is a magic wand, but it may be a helpful tool. In closing, we're looking forward to the process of continuous improvement as we embark on the beginning of the next 3-year LCAP cycle. I'm hopeful that with the redesign and ability to truly measure these expenditures, we can continue to make informed decisions about how to best stretch our resources to meet the needs of all the humans in our shared community. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for Ms. Morgan? I don't see any, so thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Moving on, we do not have any reports from employee organizations or other district committees. So we are item 5, E5, closed session. Mr. Avey.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. I was enthralled by the LCAP PAC presentation. The board voted unanimously to accept a hearing panel's recommendation of 1 enrollment in case number OM-40, 1 suspended expulsion in case M-39, and 1 expulsion in case number S-38. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we are on item F, visitors' comment. I believe, Ms. Wright, we have a public comment. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. The clock on the screen counts down the time under the Ralph M. Brown Act. The board is not allowed to comment on items that are not on the agenda, so we are not ignoring your comments. We just can't respond to any individual comments. The superintendent can refer items to staff who can follow up with you. Ms. Wright, would you please facilitate public comment?
Of course. Our first speaker is Caroline Digman, followed by Marcia Hesh.
Hello. My name is Caroline Digman. I'm here to talk about reading. From 2009 to 2011, I worked at a regional office of McGeorge Law School's California Parole Advocacy Program. We handled approximately 32,000 parole revocation hearings per year. Poverty and addiction were the primary causes of revocation. Newly incarcerated clients would receive papers that explain the revocation process. Very often, clients couldn't read those papers. Half of my job, 20 hours a week, was spent just taking calls from clients. Very often, grown men would tear up and say, "I can't read. Ma'am, can you explain to me what's going on?" Screening starts next year. Teachers need to be trained. The CTA has continuously blocked state mandated screening or training, which leaves districts on the hook to pay for it. As one CTA rep council member told me, the CTA's opposition to training isn't rooted in research. It's rooted in their policy to oppose anything that tells them how to teach reading. The CTA requested that the public follow the science on COVID. They now need to lead their own members to understand that it is time to follow the science of reading. If you'd like to learn more, contact SCOE's California Dyslexia Initiative, and they can tell you more about the cost of illiteracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marcia Hesh, followed by Patsy McGavick.
Good evening, board. I have continued concerns that I have brought to your attention about fraudulently altered special education records where my signature was fraudulently removed. I sent you documents and I sent you a video recording to prove evidence of this. My request is this board put an agenda item on this board meeting and request there be an audit of special education records district-wide to find if there are more victims. Your legal counsel has denied me the communications that occurred between OCR on this complaint where my records were fraudulently altered. I have rights to those records because they are. I made a public records request to ask legal counsel to provide the contract in which this district is spending money to pay this legal counsel. I am highly concerned the involvement of potentially hiding this fraud. This needs to be audited. If you don't, this is a possible violation of Penal Code 470, which is in regards to allegations of fraud, which I do intend on following through on each and every individual I suspect may have been involved, including legal counsel. I suggest this board do a third-party investigation and audit why my signature was removed. I have not seen, according to Educational Code 35162, 35163, anything on board agendas about litigations, mediation costs. This is costing our district, but we are repeatedly asking parents to vote on bonds and more funding. I tell the public, say no until they audit this and find out who committed fraud.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Patsy McGavick.
I want to thank you all for your time that you give to our community. And this is a much softer topic, but one important to many, many parents. The dress code was addressed, I believe, at the last meeting and that you will be voting on it tonight. So I'm representing myself and parents who were not able to come tonight. Parents at Orangeville Open and Bella Vista and some of the other elementary and K-8 schools. I'm requesting that you delay vote and take a little bit more time to review the language, to be abundantly clear in what those minimum standards are, so that there is no space for interpretation. Parents have discussed what is it to exactly cover the buttocks? How can we make sure that there's not interpretation from students to be more lenient than should be, or from staff to be more enforcing than should be? It's language such as, should it cover the crease or not? Is it okay to put a length in there? Or if it's covering the rib cage, if their arms are raised or if their arms are down, just to help with the enforcement being uniform. And secondly, many feel that there is value in setting a standard that covers more rather than less, particularly in light of the alarming rate of depression that we see in our teenage population, and that when less is covered, it actually encourages comparison. Whereas we're in a learning environment where we want to protect the mental health and the opportunities to learn of our students, and that perhaps setting a higher standard will raise them to a higher standard of viewing themselves, not comparing to each other. So I encourage the board to take more time in discussion and to consider some refining revisions before adopting a final dress code. I'm sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was our final public comment.
Thank you. We are going to move on to item G, consent calendar. Do any of my board members wish to remove any items on consent calendar? Ms. Krepchak.
I'd like to remove item G7.
Any others?
I'd like to remove item G8.
Okay. Anybody else? That being the case, do we have a motion to approve items G1 through 6 and G9 through 17?
Sorry,
Did I mess up? Go ahead.
I would like to pull another item.
Okay.
Item G16.
Okay. Any others? Okay. So that being said, do I have a motion to approve items G1 through 6, items 9 through 15, and items G17 through, I'm sorry, items G17?
So moved.
Ms. Creason, second. Mr. Perez? We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Creason?
Aye.
Mr. Perez? Ms. Krepchak? Ms. Viasquez? Mr. Avey? Ms. Costa?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So, did you get that, Steph? Okay, so we'll start with Ms. Krepchak, items G7 first, and if you want to go right into G16.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I have to apologize to my colleagues. This is due to, I don't know, the fact that I am a newbie or my ignorance, but I was a little bit confused regarding the dress and grooming policy. The items had been presented in 2 different agenda items before, with the uniform and then with the board policy of dress and grooming. And so I thought that we were actually going to vote on the uniform policy and that this was premature, that this board policy was premature. And so I was actually going to pull it and ask that we vote on it at the same time. So I have had inquiries from the community about the uniform policy, and I have been telling people that it is not on the agenda today because I misunderstood the way that we are voting on the policy. I spoke to the superintendent. She had told me that that was going to be an administrative regulation, and we are in fact just voting on the board policy, which I understand now, but I feel like I have not been speaking the truth to the community. And if you guys wouldn't mind delaying this until the next meeting, that I would really appreciate that.
Okay, any other comments about G7? Ms. Viasquez.
More of a question, is your request to just delay board policy 5132.4 school uniforms, or both of the policies contained in this item?
Thank you so much for clarifying. So actually, I have no issues with retiring board policy 5132.4 school uniforms. So I think we're all in agreement or making an assumption that we are going to retire that board policy. But the other one, the dress and grooming, 5132, that I thought that that's coming back for more discussion. The general board policy.
So I misunderstood because your initial comments indicated that there was a issue around the school uniforms, but
I
you're now
misspoke. I
saying-
shouldn't have said that word. I meant
Okay.
school dress code.
Got it. I was hoping we could just get some of the
Thank you.
things out of the way, but it sounds like it should be remain as a single item. So mine was just a point of clarification.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comment? Want to clarify or?
So to clarify, so my conversation with Ms. Kravchuk prior to the meeting was what is being acted upon tonight, which to clarify, it is the board policy related to dress and grooming. The dress code that came before the board at the last meeting, it was to the board for discussion. We highlighted the process. We shared the feedback that was received. We shared the revisions to the dress code. That dress code does not require board policy. It is connected with the administrative regulation, which is managed by cabinet and staff. So the item that the board is acting upon tonight before you is the board policy related to dress and grooming. The key changes on this policy are connected with schools individually being able to create their own dress code, which is what we're trying to move away from. So your action on this policy helps us have a uniform dress code for implementation for the whole system for district. I can speak a little bit to impact. So if there is an interest in delaying, the impact would be that staff would have to delay the implementation of the dress code, which would, it includes planned training and orientation for staff and also students prior to the start of the school year.
Does that clarify or help at all, Ms. Kravchuk?
I mean, it's whatever. I am asking for us to delay it. I wasn't prepared to vote on it tonight in the way that it is actually presented. So my request would be for us to delay the vote maybe to the special meeting in July, if that's possible. But if that's not the will of the board, then I will just vote no. So whatever you guys would like to do.
Ms. Creason?
So I want to be respectful and just honor that I hear your request and I understand why you're making the request. It's going to be my, I would like to make the motion to move it forward for a few reasons. Number one, because I know school preparation happens and it's a quick timeline. If we put it off till July, school starts in 2 weeks. Like, how do you implement it that fast? And I understand it was a misunderstanding, but it is clearly laid out here. So anyone that was reading, and this is not a dig at you, Ms. Kravchuk, it's really not. I misunderstand stuff sometimes too, but it is here. So I think we did do our due diligence as a district to provide the information to the community. And it has come up many, many times. And I think that we need to vote on it at this point. So just want to honor, and I hear you and I understand, but that is where I would land on the vote.
Anybody else? Mr. Avey?
Thank you. I'm in a similar position as Ms. Creason, and I think it's not just implementation for staff and teachers, it's also for parents. I know a lot of parents they're doing their back to school shopping very soon. And I do fear that a decision at the end of July or even our first regular meeting on August 13th, the last thing I want is a parent to buy clothing for their child that they're not permitted to wear. So I think as a parent, I do recognize that there's some issues that I'm still a little bit concerned about, but I'm hoping that this year as it plays out, we're going to learn from what is in the administrative regulation. And like most policies and ARs, we can adjust at a later date when we find out what issues are more problematic than others. And I hope that will come back at that time.
Thank you. Mr. Perez?
And I concur with Mr. Avey.
Okay.
This is Mrs. Costa.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. Any other comments? Okay, so go back to Ms. Krevchek. You kind of made a motion to remove the item. Do you want to stay with that? And then we'll vote on that, and then we'll go to your,
Okay,
we'll go to your motion because that we move forward. So if you want to make a motion to remove it, you can do so, Ms. Krevchek.
I'm trying to pull it back up now.
But she did. Mrs. Zima made a motion to move it forward. But Tanya, did you make a motion?
I
Hold it?
think, yeah, I
Okay.
think we take,
Okay,
I think because there's a motion on the floor from Ms. Creason that, and we just had discussion. So my question would be, is there a second on that motion? Can you repeat,
I move.
hold it, let's
or am I
Legal
getting this
counsel?
wrong?
help us out.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first we need to address Ms. Kravchuk's motion that she made to take it off of consent. And then after that's determined, unless she's removing that motion, she has the ability to do that also.
But it
Assuming she's moving forward with that motion, then there needs to be a vote on whether or not we're agreeing to that. Then from that, we'll address the motion that Ms. Creason is making related to whether or not we're going to actually move forward with making action on the item.
Okay, so I think I heard you, Ms. Krevchek made a motion to remove it, the item
Out of
from
the
consent.
consent calendar.
Okay. So we removed it. We're discussing it now.
Okay,
Okay, so
so
now
now Ms. Creason's,
motion to
motion.
move the item.
right,
Is there a second? Okay, so we will vote on via roll call. Ms. Creason,
aye.
Mr. Perez?
Is this for taking it off or keeping it on?
No, this is to move it forward.
Moving it.
No.
No. Ms. Krevchek,
Nay.
Ms. Fiasquez, Mr. Avey, Ms. Costa,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So the item does move forward with 5 yeses and 2 nos. Okay, so we're moving on now to item G8. Mr. Avey, you pulled G8, I believe.
Yes, I did, but it's more for a comment than a question. I wanted to pull this. This is the special education local plan area, the plan that San Juan Unified is adopting. I wanted to pull this because I think as a district, we've been going through a lot of work within our special education community. And the SELPA really is at the heart of that work. And I wanted to recognize that while, we always have room to improve and get better over time, I, as a board member, have seen significant progress on our work in special education over the past 2 years. As the representative to the Community Advisory Committee that's organized around the SELPA, this year in particular, I think that we've seen some of the transformative change that we all want. And I want to recognize that this is the vehicle for that change and the vehicle for those conversations. And it's my hope that we continue to use the CAC and the SELPA as the place where we're convening around how we are, improving our special education system within the district and continuing to get better. I also want to commend staff that bringing this forward, we are in a place where I think there is more cooperation, more collaboration in the special education work that we are doing. And I think that we've made real progress. So I just wanted to pull it mainly to memorialize this moment because I think we have so many moments where it feels like it's not getting better. And I think this is one where we're not there yet, but we are making progress. And I think adoption of this is one sign of that progress. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Avey. Anybody else? Ms. Creason?
I really appreciate your words as the board liaison prior to you. It was very, very different. I was holding on to that committee really, really tight and I didn't want to let it go when you wanted to take it over, but it was time and I'm glad that that happened. And there's even more. I know we have a lot of champions up here for special education and I understand there's a lot of people going through a lot, but there has been tremendous progress and tremendous change, both because of the community's involvement in a meaningful way, a real genuine partnership, and because of leadership. And none of this happens overnight. None of this is a magic wand, but there has been demonstrated actionable change over several years that sometimes often does not get mentioned or celebrated. So thank you for pulling the item and saying what you said. And I really appreciate your leadership as the board liaison at this time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to adopt G8?
So moved.
Second.
Creason and Mr. Avey. We'll do a roll call. Ms. Creason? Mr. Perez? Ms. Krepchek? Ms. Fiasquez? Mr. Avey?
Aye.
Mr. Costa? I'm sorry, Ms. Costa.
Aye.
I apologize.
It's all right. Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So that was unanimous. Okay, we're on to G16. Who pulled G16? Was it Ms. Tanya? Go ahead, please.
I motion to postpone voting on this item until we receive a link to all of the SIPSAs and are
Okay.
able to review them.
Anybody else? Comment? Yes, Mr. Avey.
This question's more for the superintendent. Does that create any legal issues with the adoption of the LCAP, or would this be a reasonable item to lay over until we have an opportunity to review the SIPSAs?
It does not pose a legal issue.
Then I would second the motion when it comes up.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to remove item G16.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
So I hear there's no legal issue. Is there any issue at all that we should be concerned about if we hold on this?
No, there's no issue.
Okay.
We can provide the link and then we can bring it back at the next meeting.
in July.
Thank you.
That'd be July.
Mhm.
Well, possible meeting in July. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to remove the item and postpone it to another board meeting. It may be July, but it could be later on, okay? It's for the record. So that being the case, we will do a roll call. Ms. Creason.
Aye.
Mr. Perez.
Aye.
Ms. Krepchek. Ms. Fiasquez. Mr. Avey. Ms. Costa. Ms. Costa? Pam?
Sorry about that. Aye.
And I vote aye. So that has been removed. And Ms. Bassanelli, you make note of that.
Yes, we'll follow up on that.
Okay. Okay, we are moving on to business items. We are at item I1. This is a report. Dr. Levinsky.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, board members, Superintendent Bassanelli, Ms. Cunningham. This evening, the superintendent is recommending that the board hear a report regarding the local educational agencies, the school district's measurement of progress for the local indicators related to the state accountability dashboard. And it's my pleasure once again to introduce Dr. Gianfranco Tornatori, who will kick off this item.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli and Ms. Cunningham. This evening, we are here to present the San Juan Unified School District's California School Dashboard Local Indicators. This evening, we will be sharing information regarding the California School Dashboard Local Indicator requirements, San Juan's local indicator results that will be posted to the 2024 dashboard, and information regarding the timeline and release of the 2024 dashboard. In 2013, California adopted the local control funding formula and initiated the development of district local control and accountability plans. This laid the groundwork for the state accountability system that reports district performance in each of the 8 state priority areas using both state and local indicators. State indicators are based on data that is collected consistently across the state and are aligned to state priority areas 4, 5, 6, and 8. And local indicators indicated in blue on the slide and the focus of this evening's presentation are based on data collected at the local level and are aligned to state priority areas 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. California has approved the following local indicator requirements for districts to measure and report progress on the related state priority areas, which include annually measuring its progress in state priority areas 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 using the California adopted self-reflection tools. 2, reporting the results to the local governing board as part of a non-consent item at the same public meeting in which the LCAP is adopted. And 3, reporting the results to the public through the dashboard using the California adopted self-reflection tools for each of the local indicators. A district that meets all 3 of the state requirements for a local indicator will receive a performance rating of MET for that local indicator on the dashboard. A district that does not meet all 3 of the state requirements for a local indicator will receive a performance rating of not met. And a district that does not meet all of the 3 state requirements for 2 or more consecutive years will receive a performance rating of not met for 2 or more years. I will now turn it over to Chris Smith, Assistant Director of Assessment, Evaluation, and Planning, to share the results of our local indicators.
Thank you, John. Before sharing the results for each local indicator, I will begin by sharing that San Juan Unified has met all 3 of the state requirements for each local indicator. For local indicator 1, our performance level is met. This local indicator requires LEAs to measure its progress in meeting the Williams settlement requirements at 100% of school sites. The required information for this local indicator are also reported as part of the Instruction Material Sufficiency Resolution, which was approved by the board on September 26, 2023. And the School Accountability Report Cards, which were approved by the board on January 23, 2024. The results of this local indicator that will be reported on the California dashboard includes the percentage of full-time equivalency marked clear is 85.8%. The percentage of students without access to standards-aligned instructional materials, which is 0%. And the percentage of facilities that did not meet the good repair standard is 0%. As a note, since teacher assignment data has not yet been released by the California Department of Education, districts have been advised to report 21-22 data for this indicator, which is what is being reported here. When the data is available, the state will populate the teacher assignment data on California Department of Education's data reporting website, DataQuest. For local indicator 2, our performance level is met. This local indicator requires LEAs to report its progress in implementing state academic standards. The results of this local indicator will be reported using the state-adopted self-reflection tool on the California dashboard and will report that we are currently at a level 4 for providing standards-aligned professional learning in English language arts, English language development, mathematics, next-generation science, and history social science. A level 4.8 for making standards-aligned instructional materials, a level 4.6 for implementing policies and programs to support instruction, a level 3.6 for implementing career technical education, health education, physical education, visual and performing arts, and world language standards, and a level 4 for supporting and engaging teachers and administrators in identifying their professional learning needs. This means that across all categories, we are between initial implementation and full implementation with sustainability. For local indicator 3, our performance level is met. This local indicator requires LEAs to measure its progress in implementing policies, programs, and practices related to parent and family engagement in the areas of building relationships between school and staff and families, building partnerships for student outcomes, and seeking input for decision-making. The The results of this local indicator will be reported using the state-adopted self-reflection tool and will report that we are currently at a level 4.5 for building relationships, a level 4.5 for building partnerships, and a level 4 for seeking input and decision-making. This means that we are between full implementation and full implementation with sustainability across all three categories. This is an increase from last year, where we were between initial implementation and full implementation. For local indicator 6, our performance level is met. This local indicator requires the LEAs to measure student performance of school safety and connectedness. That being said, I want to point out that San Juan Unified, we also administer the climate survey to staff and parents in addition to students and use the results to inform our planning. This evening, however, I will be only reporting on student responses since this presentation is focused on our local indicators. The school climate survey was administered to students in grades 4 through 12 from January 9th through February 6th. The results of this local indicator that will be reported on the California dashboard includes the percent of students in grades 4 through 12 who responded agree or strongly agree in the following categories. For connectedness, the percent of students who responded positive was 58.2%. For safety, the percent of students who responded positive was 59.9%. For local indicator 7, our performance level is met. This local indicator requires LEAs to report the extent to which students have access to and are enrolled in a broad course of study. This is determined by the percentage of students with a report card grade in all broad course of study subject areas. For TK through 8, this includes the percentage of students who received a grade in ELA, math, science, social science, and PE. For grades 9 through 12, it includes the percentage of 12th grade students who received a grade in graduation required courses throughout high school for ELA, math, science, social science, world language, PE, and visual and performing arts. The results of this indicator will report that 93.2% of TK through 5th, 94.5% of 6th through 8th, and 90.4% of 9th through 12th grade students received a broad course of study. Finally, with regard to the California School Dashboard, we are expecting the results of both the state and local indicators to be released by the California Department of Education with a tentative date of November 22nd, 2024. This will be the first year that in the dashboard's existence that every metric will have a color because the dashboard colors are based on 2 years of data. This is necessary because it uses both status, the current year of data, to compare to change the previous year. Members of the board, this concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Ms. Kravchuk?
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. On slide 6, for basic services, facilities that do not meet good repair, does that include charter schools within our district?
That would be just our ones that come through our SARCs.
Okay, thank you. On slide 7, progress implementing standards, you mentioned a few examples of CTE, world language, PE, and that was the lowest one, 3.6. Is there a way to hone in on, those are all very different. Do we know if that's lower within CTE, world language, PE? And if you don't have that now, that's okay. But is it categorized that way?
So the two areas in which we are still working on making progress on, one of them was around the world language, and world language is the area. So one of the needs that we've identified is that we need to increase opportunities for English learners to meet the college and career world language and CLA literacy requirements. So in response to that right now, we do have an LCAP action 1.34 focused on world language proficiency validation that provides students who are or at one time designated as English learners the opportunity to have their home language validated for this portion of the biliteracy requirements.
Great. You said there were two.
The other one is around physical education, and we also have an action to support that as well in the LCAP right now, Action 2.19, to offer professional learning in support of the implementation of standards that meet the needs of all of our learners. Right now, we're also adding an additional teacher on special assignment at the secondary level to support that work as well.
Thank you. Okay, and then two more questions. On slide 9, for the respondents for the climate surveys, is that for number of students overall or all respondents?
That was based on just our student responses, so all the students overall.
So is it respondents or overall students in our
58.2% of students
that are enrolled in San Juan?
enrolled in San Juan.
Okay, so I mean, I see that as pretty low. So what is the threshold? The state threshold, it says that we met it. So what is the state threshold?
So the to meet is part of it is just reporting out as part of the local indicator presentation. So there isn't a state threshold. It is one that we've noticed that we do want to increase, with our LCAP, the through line of it is connectedness and safety. So we've recognized that in the 50% is lower than where we want to be. So there are multiple actions within the LCAP to help move that forward. And part of our metrics with moving forward is increasing that percentage as well.
I see. Okay, so the fact that we are yes, reporting it out, thank you, is how we meet this requirement.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
I was actually going to reserve this rant because I've done it before, but we have new people. So thank you for the presentation and thank you for the work that goes into it. But in general, the local indicators presentation, for the most part, we meet it just by reporting it out, which I know at the very beginning was like, that seems a little pointless. I don't think we've ever not met it because we've always reported it out. Ideally, there'd be some kind of standards that, we're comparing against, but it's kind of I've found it to be a little bit of a box check, not because anyone on our team has framed it that way. That is just how it is required by law that we put it out there. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. And I was going to reserve the rant, but you gave me the opportunity to say it again. So
Anybody else? Mr. Avey?
I love a good rant. So, no, thank you very much for the report. I dove into a little bit of the data around the parent and family engagement section. Yes, we met the requirement because it was reported. Couple things that I keyed in on. First off, seeking input in decision-making. I was glad to see that number increased. I think that I personally have seen more intention around seeking input in decision-making around the strategic plan, the dress code, the community advisory committee. So I do feel like as a parent that came into this very frustrated because I felt like there was a lot of check the box surveys, I do feel that we are doing a better job of seeking input in decision-making. And so I appreciate that has increased. One of the narratives I was looking at, and I think this speaks to Ms. Morgan's point during the LCAP PAC, talking about parental engagement, a lot of the narrative is around our FACE program, which is undoubtedly fantastic. They do a lot of great work. And I think for me, as I see as kind of the next level of that work is, how do you take that district-wide top level FACE that you can bring around everywhere, and how do you embed the ideals of FACE within every school? So you're truly creating that environment at every school that you get from FACE when they show up. And we don't talk about it here, but I think for me, that's that next level of parental engagement. And I think that's the next level of SIPSA and just so many things. We have a lot of great district initiatives. How do we truly embed that within the culture at a school site? Because that's where we see, progress with, tens of thousands of students. So just kind of my comment there. I think that we're doing great work, and it's how do we go even deeper and make it even better? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 2, local control and accountability plan, Ms. Slavinsky.
Good evening again. As you know, the 2024-27 LCAP is a three-year plan that supports the continuous improvement of student performance within the 8 state priorities with an emphasis on English learner, low income, and foster youth students. Prior to adopting the LCAP, Education Code requires that a public hearing of the governing board is held to solicit recommendations and comments from the public regarding actions and expenditures included in the plan, which was held on the June 11th, 2024 board meeting. This evening, the superintendent is recommending that the board approve the San Juan Unified School District 2024-27 Local Control and Accountability Plan. And Dr. Tornatore and I are here to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Thank you. We do not have public comment, correct? Okay. Do my colleagues have any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the LCAP?
So move.
Ms. Krivchak? Mr. Perez, second. We will now vote by roll call. Ms. Creason? Mr. Perez? Ms. Krivchak? Ms. Vasquez? Mr. Avey? Ms. Costa?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's unanimous. Moving on to item 3. Choices, charter, and dashboard. Mr. Ginter.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. This evening, we're here so you can hear a report regarding the San Juan Choices Charter School measurement of progress for the 5 local indicators related to the State Accountability Dashboard. And at this time, I will turn things over to Mr. Brent Gibbons, Director of the school.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. I'm happy to be here tonight presenting the Choices Charter School Local Control and Accountability Plan, Local Indicators Annual Update for 2024. As part of the state accountability system, I'm here to report on Choices Charter Schools local indicators for the California School Dashboard. These results reflect the data from our self-reflection tool and measure progress of state priority areas 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7. The performance level for priority 1, basic services, was met with no issues. The performance level for priority 2, academic standards, was met with all items falling within level 4 or 5, full implementation through full implementation with sustainability. The performance level for priority 3, parent and family engagement, was met. The key items being reported on our 2023 parent satisfaction or parent school satisfaction survey at 87% or higher included the highest ratings for parents being well informed about their students' academic progress. We're also pleased to note that 96% of parents reported having an opportunity to provide input on school decisions. The performance level for priority 6, school climate, was met with many items being reported on our 2023 student and parent school satisfaction survey at 95% or higher. We are proud that our students reported feeling safe on our campus and had positive experiences with a caring and responsive staff. 100% of parents also reported that Choices was a positive and supportive educational and social environment that they would recommend to their friends and family. Continuing on with priority 6, 91% of students with disabilities reported feeling safe at Choices, and 56% experienced less anxiety since attending our school. 100% of our graduates would recommend Choices to other students, and they reported that there was a teacher or other adult who really cared about them. 52% of our graduates stated that they would not have graduated had they not enrolled at Choices. And last, the performance level for priority 7, broad course of study, was met with 3 key findings. We have increased the access to advanced level courses by growing our AP courses from 2 to 5 classes in the last 5 years. And there are no barriers to enter any of our honors or AP courses. In addition, we're committed to expanding our course offerings with the addition of at least one new course each year and growing our CTE pathways. As a small school, Choices Charter School is proud of the ongoing work from our teachers and staff to offer a wide range of core academic programs and electives while ensuring our students and families feel safe and are known, valued, and connected. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Givens. Do my colleagues have any questions? Ms. Krivchak?
No questions. Just want to say well done. You have a couple of 100% here and, you know, students recommending the school to other students. I don't know what better rating you can get, but I think I'm even more impressed with the 87% of parents that check their students' progress on the online curriculum program at least once a week. So if you can tell us how you do that and we can replicate it in all of our schools, wave that magic wand and make that happen.
Right.
Well
No,
done.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. I would just comment, Mr. Givens, the one that was not mentioned, the parent and family engagement. 100% of the parents indicate they're satisfied in how the school keeps them informed about their students' academic progress. That's very impressive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4, Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP, Mr. Ginter.
Good evening once again, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. At this time, the superintendent is recommending that the board approve the San Juan Choices Charter School 2024 to 2027 LCAP. It was last brought forward for a public hearing on June 11th, and Mr. Givens is here to answer any questions you may have before you vote.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions? Okay, if not, would somebody like to entertain a motion? Ms. Krivchak? Ms. Creason? Excuse me. We will now do a vote, roll call vote. Ms. Creason? Mr. Perez? Ms. Krivchak? Ms. Vasquez? Mr. Avey? Ms. Costa? Ms. Costa?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. We are now at item 5, adoption of the budget 2024-2025. Mr. Ryan.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. The superintendent is recommending that the board adopt the San Juan Unified School District 24-25 budget, including the approval of the Education Protection Account spending plans for the district and Choices Charter School, the excess reserves in the ending fund balance, the district staffing standards, and approve revisions to the 23-24 budget.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Ryan? Mr. Avey.
Thank you. First off, thank you. I know that's a massive undertaking. This budget, am I correct, does not include the most recent labor agreements that we've been, but we'll see it at the 45-day revision?
Correct.
Okay. If I may just make one request at that time, I know within the budget, we include the average salary for teachers. That's kind of one of the standard metrics we include in the budget. If I could also just find out what the median salary is for teachers, I found that as another good data point so we understand what the majority of our teachers are making. So not a request at this time, but when the 45-day revision comes up, just so that you have that in the back of your mind.
Of course.
Anybody else? Okay, this is an action item. Is there a motion to adopt the 2024-2025 budget, including the educational protection account spending plans for the district and Choices Charter School, the excess reserves and the ending fund balance, and the district staffing standards, and approve the revisions to the 2023-2024 budget? Is there a motion? Ms. Vasquez, is there a second? Mr. Avey, we will vote by roll call. Ms. Creason, Mr. Perez, Ms. Krivchak, Ms. Vasquez, Mr. Avey, Ms. Costa.
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's unanimous. Moving on to item 6, arts, music, and instructional materials. Ms. Linsky.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, board members, Superintendent Bassanelli, Ms. Cunningham. This evening, the superintendent has recommended that the board hear a report on the arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant, have discussion, and approve the block grant spending plan. During this presentation, I will share background information and point out allowable uses of the block grant funds according to Assembly Bill 181, which was approved by Governor Newsom on June 30th, 2022. I will also share about the planning processes used with our partners to ensure voice and input were collected to inform recommendations and decision-making. It's important to note that these discretionary block grant funds are one-time funds. So recommendations for use of the funds do not include ongoing expenses such as additional employees or employee salaries and benefits. In addition to the allowable uses of the funds, as you see detailed in the third bullet, a unique feature of this block grant is found in the use of the word discretionary in the title of the grant. With this, we understand that school districts are encouraged but not required to proportionally use the funding for the purposes noted in the third bullet. Based on this, San Juan Unified is using this opportunity to prioritize our employees in partnership with our labor leaders and the members they represent. And accordingly, we are placing priority on our students. We believe that when our employees are well supported, they then can more effectively serve and support our students. Like many other planning processes, we used a thorough process to ensure the inclusion of voice and input from our community partners, students, families, and our employee groups. This happened in 3 major ways. First, we began meeting as a large representational group in the summer of 2023 to consider in what ways we might best use our new arts education funds, including the Proposition 28 funds and this discretionary block grant. Also, as we do each year, we engaged in a comprehensive local control and accountability plan, or LCAP, planning process, as you heard about in detail at the June 11th board meeting. This information and feedback was also used in connection to the arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant plan. Finally, in working closely with our labor partners before and throughout the bargaining cycle, agreements pending board approval were made to prioritize our employees, their well-being, and their recruitment and retention. We are hopeful that these investments will greatly enhance the district's ability to recruit new employees for so many of our hard-to-fill positions, and then to retain or keep them for many years as productive members of the San Juan Unified community. Again, we know that if we effectively support our employees, they then will be positioned to more effectively support and educate our students. The recommended spending plan for this discretionary block grant supports our strategic plan, which was recently adopted by the Board of Education, as you know, on May 28th. Specifically, it provides early action steps to activate and mobilize strategic direction number 3, which is to enhance employee systems and supports. The recommended spending plan is also in close alignment with our core values, which are part of our strategic plan as well. Specifically, I'd like to elevate social emotional intelligence, resilience, and championing our employees. Without employees who are resilient, and effectively supported each day, we cannot effectively educate, serve, and inspire our students every day. Given the background information, discretionary and allowable expenses of these one-time block grant funds, and the importance of prioritizing our employees, The superintendent recommends the spending plan you see here on slide 6. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Slavinsky. Do my colleagues have any questions? Ms. Creason.
Not a question, but I thank you for bringing this and for the report, and just want to say I fully support this item. The workforce shortage is real. So everything that we can do to invest in our team will help invest in our students. So 100% makes sense. Also, something that I got to put pressure on you guys. When I show up at some schools and I hear an art teacher talking about all the money they spend, I have said, "What's your Venmo?" and come out my pocket to help out. I mean, the amount of money all of our educators put into their classroom. But when you talk about these art supplies, that they get used up so fast. They're not, things that get passed on year to year when you're talking about a canvas and paints and all the things, right? And I don't know if you remember watching your kids or for yourself getting that new fresh box of crayons. It's really magical, for mental health and for their overall wellness. It's a big deal. So just fully support all that. And then also want to say, I can't say how many times, especially in my earlier years in the board, when I would visit a campus and they didn't have an art teacher or an art teacher that can only do so much, that really couldn't provide all the instruction, especially at the older grades, all of the instruction that was in demand. So this is the kind of work and prioritization that will get us there. So just want to express my support for the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Krivchek.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I heard you correctly. So we are not allocating funds in this funding cycle to bullet point 3 library books.
That's correct.
Okay. And then for on slide 6, the spending plan, the 500,000 site allocation for site allocations, how does that work for K-8 schools?
Very similar to how it works for all of our schools, our elementary schools, K-8 schools, middle schools, and high schools will receive a site allocation out of these funds. That's a per pupil allocation with also an equity factor built into it. So an equity factor, when we think about our high density schools and the socioeconomics and demographics represented at that school, that equity factor is built in. It's also very similar to the site allocations that we developed and rolled out earlier this year with the Proposition 28 funds.
Does it take into account if they already have an art teacher or what kind of resources they already have?
It does take that into account. What's really great about all of this, and kind of hearkening back to your comments, Ms. Creason, I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity this year to have multiple pots of funds in support of arts education. The Proposition 28 funds have done a tremendous thing to support all of our schools in adding teachers, arts education specialists to each of the schools. And so then there are some additional funds, 10 to 20% of the Proposition 28 funds that were used this year and will continue to be used because those are ongoing funds, Prop 28, to provide a site-based allocation for supplies, equipment, professional learning that the sites can make decisions around. And so these funds, the allocation that you're referring to here, are in addition to the Prop 28 funds. So it's all taken into consideration when those site allocations are developed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. This is an action item. Is there a motion to approve the plan of the arts, music, instructional materials discretionary block grant funding as presented? Is there a motion? Ms. Creason, is there a second? Ms. Krivchek, we will vote by roll call. Ms. Creason, Mr. Perez, Ms. Krivchek, Ms. Vasquez, Mr. Avey, Ms. Costa.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to I-7, middle school boundary adjustment, Mr. Camarda.
Thank you, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, Ms. Cunningham. The superintendent is recommending that the board adopt resolution number 4142, adjusting the attendance boundaries for Arden Middle School, Arcade Middle School, Catherine Johnson Middle School, Star King K-8, and Winston Churchill Middle School, selecting map number 3 for the new middle school boundaries within the western region of the district, and approving a notice of exemption regarding the boundary change as provided by the California Environmental Quality Act. I'm here to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kamada. Is there any questions? Ms. Creason?
You didn't say comments, but I have a comment.
Okay. Comment or
Is that okay,
question?
Vice President? Just very briefly, thank you. I know my colleagues, we had entertained the idea of making it a consent item. Thank you for allowing it to be a business item, just for, community have an opportunity to weigh in. So I 100% support this. I'm glad and I'm just thankful that gave it a little space and a little air and a little time for community just to remember where we were at with it because it was a little removed. So for community that may be watching, we're really not rushing this decision that I think is going to come down pretty quickly. There was a whole discussion about it at the last meeting, a full presentation, a lot of dialogue, and then years of outreach that came before it. So again, thank you, board, for allowing it to come back as a business item.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, that being the case, is there a motion to approve this item? Ms. Vasquez, I think. Second. Mr. Perez. So with the second, we will vote by roll call. Ms. Creason, Mr. Perez, Ms. Krepchak, Ms. Vasquez, Mr. Avey, Ms. Costa.
Aye.
And I vote yes, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Kamada.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 8, Safe Schools Program. Mr. Allen.
Good evening, Vice President Hernandez, members of the board, Superintendent Bassanelli, and Ms. Cunningham. We're pleased to present an update on the Safe Schools program tonight. I'll be turning it over to our Safe Schools Director, Mr. Michael Jones.
Thank you very much. I just realized I have to up my game here because I'd like to be the guy deferring to someone else next time I come to present. No, just kidding. I actually enjoy being here in front of all of you and happy to share our program and the things that we do for the district. I know some of this is going to be a repeat for many of you, but I know we have some new members and I was asked to bring this overview back, but I'd also like to speak on a few topics of things we've accomplished over the last couple of years since my last presentation and where we're going next year, some of the things we have planned. I'd like to start with our team vision as a whole. The Safe Schools team is dedicated to improving overall campus safety and supporting an environment where students and staff can feel safe to learn, grow, and succeed. And we commit to these to our school communities professionally with care, concern, and with compassion. The mission of this team is very specific. Really is to support our school communities with the necessary training, incident assessment, and guidance to better prevent, plan for, respond to, recover from threats to campus safety, acts of violence, natural disasters, and other crisis incidents. To do that, we seek out regional and industry best practices. We partner with our external first responder partners as well as internal partners. We collaborate with many, many teams in this district as we'll go through and discuss here in a moment. To meet that mission, really we focus on 3 primary objectives, and it's support safety preparedness, prevention, response, and recovery. In preparedness, we're here to develop comprehensive school safety plans, which we have taken over the years and really bolstered them to quite a large degree, meeting all state standards now. Conduct school safety and vulnerability assessments. And I'll touch on those in just a moment or two. Provide staff training and drills, as well as emergency procedures and best practices. For incident prevention, we focus on threat assessment, both risk and uttered statements of threats, as well as behavioral threat assessment, as well as develop individualized student safety and monitoring plans for those students who need additional assistance or have a particular issue that we're dealing with to help address them and help them feel safe at school. Assistance with conflicts and behavior incidents, addressing site security to prevent intruders, and supporting campus supervision. For response and recovery, we provide direction and assistance with critical incident management, incident investigation, as well as liaison with our local first responders, both law and fire. Our staffing has changed just a bit since our last time I've been here. It's still me as the director. I do have a senior community safety specialist that kind of acts as the day-to-day supervisor for the team, really the field operations person who's out making sure that those CSSs are supported, and when they have more difficult situations, help guide them through some of those problem solvings, as well as the 9 community safety specialists. Last time I was here, we had 8 and a safe route specialist. That safe route specialist was on a grant position that has since expired. we were able to create a new CSS and actually hire that grant safe routes person and bring them in now to really keep that expertise within the field. For those of you unfamiliar with the Safe Routes program, it really focuses on active transportation and safety, so walking and bicycling to school. We do multiple bike rodeos, walking safety events, bicycle safety events, really within the community of a school to help people feel safe in that environment, become familiar with how to do it safely, including crossing streets, equipment as well. So we actually issue free bicycles and helmets to many, many students. I don't have a tally for you this year, but I can tell you it's in the hundreds. We combine between our Safe Routes program and then, of course, working through the sheriff's program through Christmas holidays. We provide a number of bicycles to the students within the district. Our safety specialists themselves, they are all trained in school emergency response procedures, active threat response, critical incident management and communication, the Federal Incident Command System, crisis communication and de-escalation skills, threat analysis, behavioral threat assessment, crime prevention through environmental design, school vulnerability and campus safety assessments, as well as incident investigations. So the training for them is pretty extensive. Fortunately, we have a number of CSSs that have a background in law enforcement and or probation department. So we have 5 former law enforcement officers, including myself. We have 2 former probation officers. One actually still works with the probation department part-time. And we have our 2 other CSSs, both have a background in school safety from other districts prior to coming to us. So they have quite a bit of experience coming into the district. Then we go through a pretty extensive training program to keep them up to speed. The CSSs are assigned basically zoned. If you think of it as high schools as an anchor, and then those schools that would feed that high school, it's kind of as the general zone. It's not exact because we do break things up for geography to make kind of that support easy. But in general, most of our CSSs have roughly 9 schools that they support, give or take a couple one way or the other. Where I make a big adjustment for that is the Encina, Katherine Johnson, and Greer site. I have 1 CSS assigned specifically to those 3 schools. Because of their geographical proximity, they're all basically on a single campus with a large community. It just makes more sense to provide that level of support at that particular location. Our internal partnerships. School safety really is a team sport. While Safe Schools has the name safety within our name, within our title, it requires the assistance and the collaboration of so many various teams to really help provide that school safety. As we talked about our objectives for this team, the Safe Schools team role really is in that preparedness, prevention, that monitoring. You know, we're there to help instruct the administrators and the staff how to respond safely to emergencies, how to manage those types of incidents. That's the big goal. We're there to help really make the campus safer by looking and assessing, you know, the safety of its access. How vulnerable is it to, you know, intruders coming on that campus? What are the practices that the staff is currently doing in order to ensure that there's a safe environment? How are the active supervision actually engaging with students and where are they placed? What's the camera systems look like at those school sites? So each team has a real specific role, but collaborate, you know, together, you know, and cooperatively, we hopefully bolster that site's, you know, overall safety. I understand, and I know when looking at the climate survey reports, when we see numbers like 58% positive, you know, when it comes to safety and interaction, or, you know, the low 60s, it doesn't seem very successful. The problem with a lot of those assessments in my mind is honestly because safety is such an individual perception. It takes one incident to really scar somebody for a long time when they have it. And there are so many aspects to safety. That umbrella covers social, emotional, as well as physical safety. So if you're being teased, harassed, if you're being felt somewhat excluded, that goes to a level of safety. So again, even though we focus on the physical safety and of that campus as a whole, we really have to work collaboratively with all these teams to help bolster that overall campus safety. We do maintain very effective partnerships with our law enforcement partners, as well as our fire partners. Both Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and City Police Department, we have great relationships with. And we have active engagements in most all of our threat assessments, as well as our behavioral threat assessments. So with the new SB 906, which requires that all threats of homicide and or school violence be automatically reported to law enforcement, that has really increased as far as the number of incidents that we've actually engaged together over this last year. But it's been a great partnership, and I think it's going to continue to grow. We mentioned vulnerability studies and site safety studies. Again, that vulnerability study that we did, our last one was 2 years ago. It focused on the vulnerability side on intruder access to a campus. What's the perimeter fencing look like? Is there a single point of entry? What are the detractors, or how inviting does that campus look in order to, come on and actually do an act of violence or some kind of harm? The safety side focuses on that staff practices. How prepared are they for these emergencies? How do they respond to incidents? Do they maintain effective door control, key control, ID control, those types of things? Are visitors, required to check in? So we're going and assessing those practices. We're making adjustments where we can in order to make them more effective on, at each site. The last one we did was in 2022. The findings, recommendations, the big ticket items that came out of it were improved fencing, additional emergency response training for the sites, additional campus supervision, and improved site camera and active safety monitoring systems. The results from those recommendations really came out into the district supplying $10 million to bolster 10 specific sites, but an additional 3, I believe, that had existing fencing, existing gating, just enhancements, improvements. So quite a bit of change, and those are ongoing right now, those improvements. Those actually over the summertime should be completed near the start of the school year or shortly after. Every site since then has received emergency response training, active threat training, and the new alert safety alert system training. It's called Catapult EMS. We've have increased overall campus supervision staff. At every campus, there was monies allocated to safety staff. They were each able to choose the position they felt best suited their campus, whether it be campus monitor, rec aides, behavioral interventionists, IAs. And then, of course, we brought in behavioral threat assessment training, which was able to train 250 staff members in how to collaborate to actually address behavioral threats. One of the things I wanted to share with you tonight was really kind of just a look back over the last 3 years. As I mentioned, there's so many things that really impact someone's sense of safety on campus. One of the 4 categories that really seem to have a significant impact on overall campus safety are drugs and alcohol, weapons, threats of violence, intruders, and physical fights. When you look at these comparisons over the years, you might see or might jump out at you a lot is the physical fights, 132 this last school year. These are reported incidents, and to be quite frank, we're doing a better job at reporting them. I'm not sure that the first 2 years weren't underreported. I think we've gotten much better at actually documenting our incidents. We've gotten better at responding to them. So I'm not alarmed by the increase, but it is a factor that we look at when we say where we're going to focus our efforts next year. Part of that focus next year is helping staff learn to respond to safely student conflicts, as well as to promote our Catapult emergency alert system, which has a social component to it online, where students can actually log in to report threats to themselves, to others, feelings of being unsafe, so we can address those conflicts early on. This last year, we had 407 student-reported safety concern submissions. That's pretty good. It was its first year of really being out there for a full school year. I think next year we'll get hopefully much, much more as we actually work with our communications teams to develop campaigns to make more awareness of them. You may have been familiar with in the past with Weed Tip, or we had lots of posters for Weed Tip. Weed Tip was actually brought in as part of this Catapult system, and that actually powers this student submission or community submission report service. Threats of violence, you'll see drop significantly over the course of 2 years. I actually think that's part of that catapult sense because we're able to now receive these potential concerns earlier. So we're able to address with a student at a much lower level before it becomes escalated. Behavioral threat assessment is also a big item in helping reduce that because we're able to now work with students much earlier on because staff is aware of how to bring those concerns forward. And we can now work collaboratively with specialists on site as well as within the district to assist that student and determine are they on a pathway of violence or just find some way to support them to actually remove that potential threat. So next year, what our focus is going to be, again, I mentioned we're looking at training our secondary sites, particularly how to respond safely to student physical fights. And part of that actually includes how suggestions on improvements in climate and culture, because we find if we can improve the climate and culture as a whole, if we can give that sense of connectedness, as well as provide a source where people can anonymously and safely report concerns, I think we can eliminate, or not eliminate, but reduce significantly the number of student fights that actually occur on our campuses. We want to work to increase that student awareness and submitting safety concerns. We want to identify and implement new safety practices for our new sites that are receiving that fencing and gating. It's going to impact their entire day. So we're working with them on how to develop new safety practices, including how to adjust all their current emergency responses with that new fencing and gating in mind. And we'll be getting our next round of the biennial vulnerability and safety assessments. And I'd be happy to share those results with you at the end of the next school year as well. With that, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Do my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Jones or Mr. Allen? Paula, Ms. Fiasco.
Thank you both for the update. And there's definitely a lot of progress here that has been made in the last couple of years, which is exciting to see. You expanded a little bit on the physical fights and the threats of violence, but I'm curious as well about the intruder metric or number that's doubled in the last 2 years. And I'm just curious if there's any like notable patterns, or are there like specific areas of the district, or is there any other kind of any other details in the number and or any guesses as to why it might have gone up?
Well, to be more specific, those the increase in intruders is actually students from other campuses who came on
That's helpful.
physically engaged in fights.
Oh, interesting. So they're kind of tied into the physical fight
Yes.
number. Okay, see that is helpful. I didn't have a whole lot of context for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Ms. Creason.
Thank you for the report. I have a couple of points. One, I'm so protective of our program. I uplift it every time, every opportunity I get. I know there's a lot of ideas of how to keep schools safe, and a lot of different districts do it a whole lot of different ways, especially in Sacramento County right in front of us. So it's interesting. A lot of people don't know that we do what we do when they impose their view of how we should do safety. And then I share and say, look into it. And they're like, wow, that's actually really cool. And I lift it up as a model. So I want to first say it's a wonderful model and thank you for all you do. It's not an easy job. You hit something I want to uplift, and that's the implementation side of the house, because we could have all the rules in the world and all the policies and practices, but if they're not implemented, they don't do anything. So for example, and I mean, this is all well-intended people, no one take this as a dig. I mean, we're all doing the best we can. That said, you know, when we have a bunch of fencing and then people prop it up with rock, it's not going to help. So, you know, that's a little example that's actually huge and has come up from community. So we all have to do our part in the implementation as staff, as parents, as a school community, students. We all have a part to play in this, because we can build the fence, we can make the rules, but we need everyone to do their part. You mentioned Catapult, and I'm just thinking about a lot of site visits, and I've heard great things about Catapult when it works, but when there's Wi-Fi issues, which I know this is beyond your control, and I know that this is something that we're working on, but I have to uplift it because it's come up several times on site visits that, you know, if the internet is faulty at the site, then some of the safety measures we put in place just don't work. And so I want to continue to uplift that until it's fixed. I know that the team is doing the best we can, but we need to keep doing the best we can in that space. Third, partnerships. So amazing partnerships, but one partnership I didn't see called out is the partnership with parents and kids. there's so much that can, and I don't know whose job this is, and I'm not, please don't take anything that I'm about to say as a criticism, but just something to uplift and something for us to think about is how can we provide information and training to families so they could do their part? What are the conversations? What are some tips and tricks? Some conversations you could be having at home. So your kid is, number one, letting you know if they're not safe, and how they can be safe themselves, that they're not lashing out, that they're not exhibiting violence. I mean, as board members, we kind of see the worst of the worst, right? Some things that make us cringe in closed session, right? I'm wondering, what can we do to empower, inform continually kids and their parents so that they're coming, they're getting some of this training at home and bringing that into the school site. And then also, how are we empowering students with information and support? So, I mean, and I love that we have, I forgot the name of the program where folks could go on and report and self-report. And I think that should continue. That's wonderful. We also have a school of thought of, I'm not going to snitch. And there's some training that can be done in that space too, where this is another way where you're not snitching, but you're also helping to keep yourself and others safe. So just laying that out there, I know we can have a pretty detailed conversation of what that could look like. But I think that there's a lot of room for improvement in that space. Just having my own kid that's about to be a senior and the conversations we have had about safety where he was targeted. Then he has had some friends that just kind of wilded out and did some really wild things, right? So we've seen kind of both sides of the house. And in most instances, the kids really just didn't know how to handle, like there was no one really informing them. They didn't come to the situation with some of that backfield knowledge of how do I regulate when things go really bad, where this person's messing with me, I'm going to have to fight them. And you mentioned, school kids coming, okay, I won't say the school site, but there's just two specific schools where I've heard over and over again where the high school goes over to the middle school and messes with these kids. And I hear about this in other spaces that I'm in, and they just don't know what to do, even when they do tell. So what can we do to empower? So I'll stop there. But again, really appreciate all that you do to keep our school safe. I know it's not an easy job.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Avey?
Thank you. Thank you for calling this out as a team sport, because I know this doesn't fall on the 10 to 11 people on your team. School safety is a real issue, and the one that I probably hear the most from families, and not the perceived threat, but Miss Morgan alluded to it, my kid won't go to the bathroom at school. And it's one of 3 bathrooms on the campus that's unlocked because the other 2 are locked because they don't have active monitoring. Since COVID, I think it's been fairly well documented that kids have forgotten how to relate to each other, and they have forgotten how to resolve problems. And that's on us. I mean, we put them in a situation where they lost a valuable skill, and it is on us to teach them how to bring it back. Because when I see these numbers, like I see physical fights and I recognize it's reported and we are doing better on reporting. I also know I hear it a couple times a week about kids that see fights that were never reported. It was in a bathroom. It was somewhere else. It never came to light. So I see this number and say, this is severely underreported. I know there's a lot of things in place. I see additional active campus supervision. I know that's a goal. I know that's something we're improving on. I also know we've had a really hard time hiring. From what I understand, we had positions that were open, and it's, that's a hard thing to fix. But I want to call this out that kids are afraid at school. I mean, especially in the upper grades. And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to try and figure out how to do it. It's not going to fall on 11 people. It's going to fall on us as a district. And I think we're trying to do it, but I think we also just have to embrace the fact that it is happening and it's bad and it is impacting education. So I just want to call that out as a collective challenge for us all to fix. Because I do know it's influencing life choices. I know of at least 3 families who made their high school choice on open enrollment based on where they heard there were fewer fights. So it is an active topic of conversation. So thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Kravchuk?
Thank you for the report and thank you for what you do. Obviously, our kids can't learn if they are not safe, and if they don't feel safe, they are not fully present. I have a couple of questions. For the safe routes, at a couple of schools that I was at, I noticed there's just a difference in terms of crosswalks. Some have flashing lights, some the schools take it upon themselves to put cones out and do some kind of help after school. Part of your vulnerability and campus safety assessment, do you analyze that? And then do we work with the county to try to get additional supports from them, like some flashing lights or additional crosswalks or anything? Or who does that fall to?
We do, and it is part of the assessment as a whole. So when we look at the site safety assessment, we do look at practices, we look at the environment, we look at those kind of adjacent streets right next to it. Its location within the community, what other hazards or threats or risks are nearby, the traffic, the type, is it a small 25-mile-per-hour zone, area residential? Is it next to a 40-mile-an-hour zone, freeway, excuse me, freeway, but, a higher, pace road, shopping centers, liquor stores, we look at all those things around that school and see where are those risks and where are things going. That safe route specialist does have very good relationships with the Department of Transportation as well as the Highway Patrol Office. They work really hand in hand to address many of these things, including asking and making recommendations for improved stoppage signs. Maybe where there isn't one, it might just be a yield or perhaps a flashing light. We are looking at, in discussions at least, how do we take on a crossing guard program within the district that will no longer be supplied by the county at all. So if we're going to do crossing guards, it's going to have to be a district item. We have many parent volunteers, bless them all, that come out and assist us. But there are limits to what those volunteers can do without that proper training. So most of it has to be on campus versus off campus, that includes staff as far as being able to monitor traffic without being an official crossing guard program, without having an official training. They're not allowed to actually stop traffic. They can only provide greater visibility. In other words, cross with the student, perhaps wearing a brightly colored vest, so they're more visible. So you have a tall person with a bright colored outfit versus, very small, elementary school students crossing that street.
So are you saying every parent who's out there doing this is actually breaking?
Technically, they're in violation of the law.
Interesting.
Basically, they're assuming the liability. If there should be an accident or an injury involved, they're assuming that liability. So we stress amongst our sites that for those sites that are having parent volunteers or even staff volunteers that are assisting with locations, that we give them specific guidelines of what they can and cannot do in stopping traffic when they can't.
I see. And is there like a formal process for schools to request some type of support like that? Or do they just speak to their representative in their area?
Well, I can answer that once we have an official program here going.
Okay, what about now? Of course,
Right now,
they don't.
we receive concerns all the time from school sites, identifying a specific intersection that might be adjacent to the campus that they believe is highly trafficked or, has low visibility for vehicles coming, through. And we work, our safe route specialists will go out and make suggestions and recommendations on what they can do right now in the meantime until we have something more formal.
Thank you. You mentioned restricting access to the school and having one point of entry. I often see exit doors on properties, like very large properties, and they're somewhere in a corner. And I think about the opposite. What if the danger is on the inside and kids need to get out? And frequently, I think just the principals have the keys to those doors. Is that true? And like in that instance, how would the kids get out?
That's very different. And because we're talking in such generalities, it's very tough to answer that question. The goal of a single point of entry is during the school hours. So after arrival and prior, during that actual school hour time, is to be able to secure that campus to the point where everybody who comes to visit that campus has to go to the office. There's no other way. They can't just go to a direct classroom. They can't walk into the cafeteria. They can't meander into the library without having first checked in on that campus. All the gates are designed to be open from the inside going out. So when you're looking at those, if you're to take a school site like Arden, Arden Middle School, it looks pretty secure. From the outside, there's a number of, fencing going around. There's a number of gates going inside that campus, as well as the campus itself, the way it's designed, has minimal actual entry points into the more secured classroom areas. The goal is to be able to secure it from the outside, but still allow emergency egress. In other words, people can exit that campus during an emergency when they have to because they're panic doors. You have panic doors going out from the main buildings. The gates themselves have panic push bars on them as well, so that we can actually leave the campus very rapidly, but we're secured so people can't come in without us knowing.
And kids would be able to open those panic doors? They're strong enough to pull whatever?
They're just like most panic doors, or most push bars on all the doors you see around. They're not very difficult to open.
Okay. I can follow up on specific sites
Okay.
and see if that is true. Regarding the incidents, and I don't know, just your opinion, particularly with the physical fights or threats of violence, what impact do you think phones and social media have on that, like specifically use on during school time?
A tremendous impact. It's sadly, most of our students cannot get away from the social media impact. There's no reprieve, there's no respite from it. When they come to school, if they're having an issue with a particular group or another student, when they go home, it continues online. I think it's a real challenge to their mental health. I think it's a real challenge to their social well-being. I think it makes them feel very unsafe at times, but they also feel disconnected if they don't have it. So it's a double-edged sword. But I do think there's a number of incidences that I can recall that fights, bullying, harassment were occurring during the school day via social media, via text. So it's a significant impact.
Do you think that we would be able to improve sense of safety and physical safety if we were to limit or remove phones during the school day?
My opinion?
Yes, your opinion. Thank you. And then one last thing, a couple of my colleagues mentioned about training to students. And I was wondering if we have done like a partnership with FACE. They frequently do some types of trainings to parents in the community, particularly around like TikTok challenges. And we see a lot of kids get hurt from that. Do we kind of partner up and do any type of presentations to community that could involve or include parents and students of how to react to certain things or what's trending, what to be aware of? Is that a possibility?
Is it a possibility? Yes. Have we done it? No. Most of our work has been done on campus during the school day. But is something we could do? Yeah, something we could explore.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones, for the report. Appreciate it very much. Okay, we're moving on to item J, board reports. Are there any board reports? I don't see any. Moving on to K, future agenda items. Do any board members wish to add any items to the future agenda? Do not see none. We do not need to return to closed session. In our adjournment, Ms. Costa asked me to adjourn tonight. It's a meeting in memory of Kathy Wilkerson Hauser, a former teacher of the year and retired teacher who Ms. Costa had the pleasure of working with at 2 elementary schools where she was the principal. So we adjourn in the past memory of Kathy Wilkerson Hauser.